You know when it's live. Live. Okay.
Hey,
Greg Russell, you in the building?
got you too, Jerry, Mr. Franklin Poe.
Mic check, mic check. Welcome everybody joining us on Facebook. This is Technology Tuesday. That's right, Technology Tuesday, not Taco Tuesday. Technology Tuesday. Greg and I decided to go live with some of the conversations that we were having in our own personal lives. Now we're in this quarantine. Greg and I have been talking a lot about technology. As a speaker, as a coach, as an author, I always go to Greg because he's the tech mind. We met many years ago. Greg is now in Houston, Texas. I live in Pennsylvania, but we both used to live in a similar area in Pennsylvania, and we were part of a marketing group. And when I met Greg, he was helping me build my website with lead generation, marketing tools, and strategies. So he's always been my go-to guy. Anytime I want to get a new software, a new tool, a new camera, anything that involves tech, I always ring up Greg first, like, yo, man, what do you know about this? What do you know about that? And he'd be like, nah, cuz, don't get it. So I thought, since we were both locked in, having some great conversations personally offline, I thought, Greg, these conversations, other people need to hear them. And I suggested to him, it might be a good idea to post live on his page, to post live on his profile, post live in his group, the Entrepreneurs Digital Advantage, to share some of these insights with other folks who may not be aware of them. Because one of the things that's happening now, people like myself who've been speaking professionally for years are now having to look for alternatives because we can't travel, we can't go anywhere. And these new virtual platforms, they were not foreign to me, but I didn't always know exactly how to use them. So I'd always be asking Greg questions, and I know I was driving him crazy because I kept asking the same questions over and over again. He was like, dude, didn't I just tell you this last week? And I'm like, I'm sorry, man. This is all new to me, and understanding what's the difference between this tool versus this tool. Everybody's talking about this one. Why should I go with this one versus another one? So I'm not going to be having the total conversation by myself. Greg is here for Tech Tuesday to share with us. And Greg, one of the questions I wanted to ask you that I think everyone could benefit from is that now we are having to switch more so by force to this virtual world. What type of events can speakers, coaches, authors, to communicate with their tribe, to communicate with their audience and their clients, what type of virtual events are out there that people can actually use?
There's several kinds of events, right? There's meetings. Most people are familiar now with Zoom has become so popular. So there's online meetings, and those are basically designed to get people to have a meeting. And then there's live streaming, kind of what we're doing right now, where we're kind of streaming, this particular conversation, this particular show to Facebook and to Facebook groups, right? So there's live streaming. And then there's actual virtual summits and virtual seminars where you get live and recorded video brought to you from a multiple of sources and speakers. And also in some cases, you can actually meet new people and actually network online. So a lot of the things that you can actually do at a physical conference, you can do now online at a virtual conference.
Okay. All right. So as a person who used to be out with folks in the audience, talking to them face to face, besides a virtual conference, so if you're not a speaker, maybe you're an author, just list some of the basic tools if a person was getting started. So when clients come to you, because I know you have a lot of clients that are speakers, authors, coaches. When they come to you, what are some of the recommendations that you give them right off the bat when it comes to switching to a digital component versus being necessarily face-to-face?
So there's it depends on what they're asking. And if you guys are have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat so we can see it. Go ahead and if any questions you have in regards to meeting virtually, doing anything online, go ahead and put that in the chat, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions. But when people come to me, Jerry, and they want to know about how to do things online, especially with meetings, it's usually trying to find which software works best with what they're trying to do. So you have to match your goals with the software and what you're trying to accomplish. And sometimes what someone may think they want may not match up with the software that they thought would be the best fit for them. So a lot of it is Tom is talking about, okay, what experience do you want your end users to have? Because you have meetings, right? And you have webinars where a webinar is like a one-to-many. And you have a meeting where you have a group of people who are actually meeting together and talking back and forth. So I think it all depends on what they want to have the end user experience. And once you know that, once you get clear to that, then it's easy to say, hey, this tool works best for that, or check out these several tools and figure out which one you're most comfortable with.
All right, I got you. So let me recap to make sure I completely understand. So you have meetings, webinars, completely two different things. Because I'm going to admit myself, this was one of the things I kept bugging you about. I was getting the two confused. Like when people would talk about Zoom and GoTo-Meeting and those platforms, I was confusing one like a live stream, like BeLive or StreamYard or things of that nature with the meetings. And in my mind, I couldn't separate the two to figure out, okay, well, if I have this, why do I need this other thing? Because don't they both do the same thing? And you helped me understand that there are different tools for different platforms that each one serves a different need. Is that correct?
That's correct. So let's talk about that for just a second. Let's talk about that. Let me bring this up so we can kind of go into that. So basically, there are two main or popular programs when it comes to online meetings where you're going to have several people come together online virtually and have a conversation. So, for example, this conversation we're having with just you and I, but we can bring in more people and have a meeting. And the two programs that are most popular right now, or at least have been, is GoToMeeting and Zoom. And I think Zoom has become so much more popular than GoToMeeting, even though GoToMeeting has started 7 years prior to Zoom. But GoToMeeting is a very powerful platform, and Zoom is just the most popular one at the moment. And when people even talk about having these meetings, they don't even say we're going to, they call it, we're going to have a Zoom call. They're starting calling it by its name, which is really cool in understanding how companies grow that big and grow that fast. So basically, if we take a look into this right quick, give me 1 second because I lost it. In December, Zoom had 10 million daily active users. And when the virus hit and social distancing set into place, they dramatically grew to 200 million daily active users in March. And so that number's even higher now that we're in April. And so you can just imagine all the people that are looking to try to use these technologies and use these meetings. And I think we were forced into it, right? We were kind of forced into having to learn this stuff. And a lot of times people didn't take the time to actually learn the platform. So something as popular as Zoom, if you if you Google Zoom fails, you'll see things where people had really had some funny moments using Zoom, because you have people who are turning themselves into potatoes, people not familiar with the platform. And so there's one where a woman actually went to the restroom because she didn't realize that the communication was two-way, but they could see her too. She just forgot. So it's pretty interesting about Zoom and all these meeting platforms. But long story short, meeting platforms is where you're going to have a meeting, right? You meet with your coworkers, meet with your department, meet with your church staff. You use these meeting platforms to have meetings. And Zoom and GoToMeeting are just two of the popular ones, and there's several other out there. So when it comes to some of these other technologies like streaming, we can get into that in just a second, but meetings is typically where people need to start, because right now we're trying to figure out how to work digitally with the people we've already been working with.
Right. So one of the things I've been seeing is a lot of people, they're using meeting platforms as a webinar platform. And what you're saying is that there's a totally separate platform that people would want to use to do webinars versus doing meetings.
That's correct. So both Zoom and GoTo-Meeting have a higher tier called webinar, right? There's GoToWebinar.
Right.
And then Zoom has one it's just called webinar, right? So there's a higher tier where there is a webinar, and a webinar is not a meeting. With a meeting, you get to exchange and talk back and forth with people who are right there. Whereas a webinar is like a one-to-many, right? Where there's only one. The people who are watching the webinar typically can't engage and interact other than a chat, or if they're brought on as a guest to ask a question. But for most of the presentation, it's one-to-many, where when you participate in a webinar, you are just an observer for most of it. Whereas a meeting, you can actually participate throughout the whole thing.
So taking it back to the physical world rather than the virtual world, the meeting would be, if you were in a corporate space, it'd be like the department meeting, right? All of the people in the department get together. Yep. If you were an author or a speaker, the meeting would be you talking with a client or multiple clients one-on-one, or having a consultation, or having some type of evaluation one-on-one. Or if you're a coach, having a coaching session with a bunch of people at the same, so a group coaching session, a one-on-one coaching session. And if you were a speaker or a consulting session with your client is not necessarily designed to be used to the meeting platforms aren't necessarily designed to be used to replace the being on stage.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Because I think a lot of times as a speaker, we're saying, well, they can see me and I can talk to them. So this is equivalent to me being on stage in front of a room, communicating with people. And you're saying, no, that's something totally different. This is just to have meetings where you can have an exchange or conversations with people one-on-one or one-to-many.
That's correct. That's correct.
All right. Yep. All right. That makes sense. I get it. Now, so meetings one, webinar would be another. So the webinar, would that be the training platform or the speaking platform?
It would most likely be the speaking platform, because it's one-to-many. It's where you're giving a presentation, you're really more on stage, and everybody else can just watch and view. Usually with webinars, you usually can have chat. You can have people ask questions, and you may have a moderator who will take a few questions if you want, but it doesn't have to be. That's a choice. So when it comes to running a webinar, you have to decide, are you going to have a live webinar where you're going to answer questions, or are you going to have a presentation where you're giving a presentation, there's not going to be any question, you're not going to take any questions at the end, and you're just going to give your presentation and determine what you want out of that presentation, because we all typically want what we call as marketers a call to action. You want something, right, people to do something at the end of your presentation, either buy a product, sign up for a newsletter, or more information. Typically, raise their hand and say, hey, I'm interested and I want more of the thing or service or strategy that you were presenting. So at the end of it, you usually have a direction that you're trying to lead people, a path that you're lead people down. And then at a certain point, you put up what we call a call to action. What do you want them to do? So for example, we're doing this right now and we're having a great time. And ultimately what we want people to do is to join our group, and they can do that at technologytuesday.com. They can go there and join the group, and then they can get more information like this from us on a consistent basis. So that's our,
say it one more time. What is it? Technology what? Technology what?
Technologytuesday.com.
Technologytuesday.com. All right.
Technology. Hey, Justin, how you doing? I see you on the chat there. Thanks for reaching out, bro. I appreciate it.
Who is that?
My man Justin. He's from PA. He's from the group. You don't remember Justin?
Oh yeah. Justin. Yes, yeah. That's right.
Yeah. So, hey, we're gonna get some of the marketing people to have a virtual meeting.
Yeah, do a marketing reunion from the Westchester group.
Yeah, how's that sound?
Yeah.
Let us know if y'all interested. Put it in the chat. We'll hook it up.
So recently we were on a conference platform. So you had the meeting platform, you have the webinar platform, but with the new technology, as technology rapidly changing, we talk about just at home. I'm at home, you're at home, and within my little office space, I've built a quote unquote studio. In my background, I'm so excited tonight because Amazon just dropped in these colored lights. So with all this white wall, now I throw a little color up on it. It doesn't look so. It kind of looks like I have a different background, even though I'm in the exact same room. So as technology is changing and microphones, we like you see everybody's having these microphones now. The cameras are getting better. Lighting, people can get in their home, like studio lighting. So what I experienced with you, because you invited me on, was not a webinar platform, but a conference platform, a platform that could replicate what people would experience if they were going to like a convention or an expo that had vendor booths, it had a breakout session as well as a main stage, all within one platform. So that is something that's new, that takes like webinars, really past webinars to like a whole new level. Would you agree on that? That's the next phase? So we have the meeting, the webinar, and now the conference platform.
That is correct. So there's a few companies that are really pushing hard to bring the technology to the point where to mimic a live conference as much as possible. So basically, to do that, then there's these components that you want to add, right? And so what these components are is a main stage. And so think of this as a webinar where you're speaking, presenting to a large audience of people, right? So you're on the main stage, you are presenting to a large audience of people. And at a conference, at least the last few that I've been to, once we were done with the keynote speaker or the presentations, we went out to breakout sessions, and there was typically several breakout sessions, and you could pick and choose which ones you wanted to go to. You couldn't go to them all. You had to pick which ones were the ones that addressed the things that you wanted to be addressed, and you could go to those sessions. And in addition to that, there was one-on-one networking time where you got to actually network with another attendee who was at that conference, and y'all got to ask some questions, get to know each other. And if you had some things in common, then you would exchange information, and it was a way for you to connect with people and get business cards and find people who could you could serve and people who could serve you. And so the networking was a big part of it, which is typically missed in meetings, and it's typically missed in webinars, because in a meeting, you're typically meeting with the people you already know. You're not kind of meeting with new people. The meeting is people in your groups already. You're working on projects. And webinars, you may have people who you didn't know to come watch your presentation, but the people who attend those aren't meeting with each other. So the whole networking is a really big piece of it. And with the ability to exchange contact information virtually with just a click of a button makes it really stand out and be something on its own. And then in addition to that, you have, sponsor and vendor booths, just like at a real conference, where you can go to that booth and you can either see a video or even talk with that vendor live and exchange information and find out about the products and services that they offer, who are there sponsoring the event. So the virtual conference, to me, is going to be a really big step, and the next step of becoming more popular, as well as the things that people are moving towards and having more virtual events. I think the conferences is definitely something that people are interested in, because with the conference, you also typically are selling tickets to the conference. So it can be a revenue stream as well.
Yeah, that was when you had told me about the virtual conference, and I tried as hard as I could to visualize how it would work. I even went backstage, or what would you call it, behind the scenes, or I don't know. I don't even know if it's backstage to see the panel, how like the controls for how the thing worked, and my brain had a block. I'm like, I don't know, Greg. I don't see how this could work. But actually experiencing the one this week, it helped clarify in my mind how in a virtual space it could replicate all of the things that I had seen or I had experienced attending conferences or speaking at conferences myself, even down to the sponsorships, having a section virtually where you can have sponsors, promote the sponsors, showcase the sponsors, and have people click on the logos for the sponsors and find out more information about them. It was, in a weird way of saying, it was almost a complete virtual experience right from your seat. Like, I was sitting here in my office, but I could connect with people because there were people on there that were from the United Kingdom. So I was connecting with people who may not have traveled to the United States for a conference, but now with this virtual platform, we could all be in the same space together. There were people there from all over the country. There were presenters, and where you were presenting, you were from Texas. There were people presenting from Pennsylvania. There were people presenting from California, and none of them had to travel. They were all right there in their home, which is, in my mind, that's like the next evolution or the next step up to the webinar.
Oh, yeah.
There were basically 3 questions I wanted folks to get answers to tonight, which one was, what type of virtual events exist? And number 2, besides what type of virtual events exist, why use each event? And I think we've done a good job so far of breaking that down. What type of events we have? You said the meeting platform, you have the webinar platforms, you have the virtual conference platforms, but then you also have the live streaming platforms.
Yep.
I think that's the only one that we haven't talked about in terms of why people would want to use them. So we have the meeting platform. The reason that is the replacement for the department meeting, the coaching session, the consulting session, the communication that you'd want to have conversationally with a person. And then the webinar platform would be you training on a stage or presenting on a stage as like you're a keynote or a training session, a breakout session. Then the virtual conference platform is like a mega event where you have multiple speakers, multiple breakout sessions, networking, and vendors and all that type of stuff happening. But then you have this live streaming, which I won't say it's new. I guess it's been around, maybe 5 years, 6 years now. Everybody's been going streaming live. So as a business owner, a speaker, coach, why would they use that type of presentation or virtual event?
Okay, I'm going to answer that. Before I do, I had a question come in on the chat there. Chris, hey man, how you doing? Thanks for reaching out. I appreciate it. Question was, what are my thoughts on Microsoft Teams for video conference?
Great question.
I haven't experienced the Microsoft Teams. I have experienced quite a few of them. I can run through a few, let you know which ones I have, but I haven't experienced it. My assumption is that it's obviously it's on the Microsoft platform. So I think that, and I know that that Skype ties into a lot of stuff because Microsoft purchased Skype several years ago, and now it's all integrated. So it's probably a part of that family. I haven't used it, so I can't say whether it's good or bad, but I'm assuming that it's based around Skype. Skype used to, in my opinion, and again, it's just my opinion, I thought Skype was really good several years back before Microsoft purchased it. Now when they purchased it and they made their changes to it, I personally don't like it as well. But I still have some clients who use it, and that's their preferred method of communication. So when I need to communicate with them, I turn it on and use it. And that's just something, I do. But as for my preference, that's not it. So what I can do is I can share with you several meeting platforms. I'll just do it quickly, several meeting platforms, and then we'll dive into Jerry's question about the live streaming. Give me 1 second to find it here. Almost there. All right, here we go. And we'll move this one. Oh, almost there. All right, guys. So check this out. You have GoTo-Meeting. That's a real solid platform. That's the one we talked about. That was very, popular as well. Is GoTo-Meeting. These are what we consider alternatives, right? You have Zoom. You have GoTo-Meeting. There's WebEx, right? And I think Cisco is probably the main computing company behind a lot of these virtual things. I think a lot of them rely on some sort of technology from Cisco. They have their own. It's called WebEx, and you can Google it and try it out. It's great for meetings as well. These all have different price points and different features. You just try them out and figure out which ones work the best. Another one is Join Me. And Join Me is something I used a long time ago, and it started out as just being able to share your screen. And since recently, they have added the fact that you can now turn on your camera as well. But Join Me is another meeting alternative, something that you can use besides Zoom. This is one I haven't used, but it's called Whereby. And this is probably the next one I'm going to try and just test out. So far, the reviews and everything I've seen on it looks so good. Looks really good. It's called, whereby.com. And most of these meeting platforms, basically, even the one I'm using today, have the controls at the bottom. So if you can see this image here, basically it has the controls at the very bottom. It has the, where you can turn on your camera, you can turn on your mic and work it that way. Most of these work the same way. So once you start using more than one, you'll start to see some similarities in how the software actually works. And then there's Google's Hangout Meets, right? So Google used to have Google Hangouts, which they no longer use anymore. But they do have a meeting platform for those of us who are G Suite users or formerly Google Apps. That's basically Gmail and Google Calendar for your business. So that's that suite of apps. They call it G Suite now, but if you are a Google Apps user, you can access something called Hangout Meets, and you can meet with your team using Hangout Meets. So those are pretty much the alternative meeting solutions that you can try out and test out. And I've tested out most of them. I did Google Hangouts before. The only one I think I haven't really done is WebEx and Whereby. So those are the two I'm still going to test out. So when it comes to streaming, online streaming like we're doing now, where you're basically going to stream into Facebook, there's two really popular places that most entrepreneurs want to stream, which is Facebook. And then there's also YouTube, right? Those have two very really engaged platforms as far as the users are really engaged. And so a lot of times people want to stream into that. Now you can use this for your business or corporate if that's something you need to do, by being able to stream into a group where that group is only a group of people who will see that stream. But a lot of times people like to use streaming so that they can stream into the public and get people interested in talking to them about certain things they're talking about. And as an entrepreneur and speaker, you can use this to gain new clients. And so a lot of marketers, a lot of entrepreneurs, speakers, and coaches use live streaming to get their content out, to get their voice heard, and to get followers and ultimately customers by using these stream apps. The one we're using today, this one is called StreamYard. And what this does is it allows you to add like a higher level production value to the show, right? If you want to call it a show or your live stream. And it allows you to add things like lower graphics and bring guests in, and be able to pull up the chat questions on screen. So these three services are kind of the most popular ones that you should definitely check out. Now, Ecamm is for a Mac only. So if you on a PC, that one's not for you. But
boo.
Yeah, man. These three is definitely worth checking out. Jerry, did you have any questions about these? I know you used BeLive and I've used StreamYard, so we can probably discuss a little bit of the differences there.
There, in my opinion, BeLive is decent. I like it. I like it a lot. For a low tech. I guess you could say it like that. If you don't, the learning curve is not that steep. So if a person wants to get on and stream fast, StreamYard and BeLive are two platforms that I have used or have seen that don't require a lot of tech knowledge. There's not a lot of settings or things you have to play around with. There's some other platforms out there which require, and some of them are even free, but they just require a lot more tech savvy versus BeLive was pretty simple. You just log in with your YouTube, you log in with your Facebook, and you could be streaming within a couple seconds versus some of these other ones. It's multiple inputs and a lot of tech, too many wires, in my opinion. I mean, now they're great. I'm not saying they're not great. It's just if a person, there's a higher barrier to entry than with BeLive and StreamYard, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. So they're very easy to use. The average user can get on and start streaming and have a higher production value than just from your phone or just your desktop. But this, the technology gets very complicated very quickly. So there's other programs and software out there you can do very similar things and more advanced things, but the learning curve drastically goes up from there. But these are a few services that work very easy for the end user. So I think that if someone's looking to stream and who hasn't tried it before, other than their phone or a computer, they should start here and look at those.
Right.
Yep.
When we recap, circle it back, and correct me if I'm wrong in any of these, because you're the expert in these areas. We pretty much have discussed 4 different virtual type of events. The live stream, which we just mentioned, which is almost like a TV show that you're making yourself for your audience. And some people could use it as, you think about television now, interviews, commercials, comedy, any type of way for you to broadcast content to your audience through the internet. And then you have the meetings, which is more conversational for you to have engagement one-on-one, but also one-to-many with your clients and your customers. You have a webinar, which would be the offline replacement of being on stage, doing a training or a keynote to many folks all at one time. And then you have the virtual conference, which now replaces like a mega event where you have multiple keynotes, multiple breakout sessions, sponsors, networking, vendor booths with Expo and all that type of stuff. Does that sum it up for Greg?
Yes, you hit it right on the head. That's exactly it. It's funny because we try to explain it as best we can, but a lot of times until you actually experience it, then the lights start to click. It's like, now I get it.
Especially with the virtual event. I mean, the virtual conference, excuse me. Some of these, again, the lines were blurred for me because you hear a lot of people talking about one platform doing another. And I think that's where the confusion gets set in, is people are looking for a Swiss Army knife, right? If you remember, we had MacGyver had a Swiss Army knife. Whenever he wanted to pull out, be like, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, I had one. My Swiss Army knife had a knife, a fork, a spoon, a saw, fishing scaler, magnifying glass, everything, toothpick, pen, all within one knife.
Wow.
I was ready, man. It was like I was ready to go. But I think the problem in this space is, and you let me know if I'm off on this, there aren't a one shop solution. It's not like you can get one thing. There's some overlap, like like in my mind, I look at that from like Microsoft Office. A person can create a table in Word, they can create a table in Excel, they can create a table in PowerPoint, but out of all those programs, only one can really do the calculations. That's Excel. words for writing letters and PowerPoints for presentations, accesses for a database. But a lot of times people in their mind, they kind of cross them up because there's some similarities between them all. So you hear Zoom being talked about a lot, and I see people live streaming with Zoom. Then they're using Zoom as also to do a webinar. But then Zoom was really designed to do meetings, but they're using it for other stuff. It's like they're having a butter knife, and their butter knife has now become their screwdriver.
Yep. I agree. There is some overlap because basically you have meetings and then you have webinars. And typically the companies that have started there they have both, they offer both. So you have some overlap there with, especially you have, Zoom that has both, GoToWebinar that has both. I'm not sure about some of these other meeting platforms, but webinar is kind of the next thing. And these have been around for a few years, so these are not necessarily new. And what came new is, hey, can we take our meeting that we're having with our people and then share it in a Facebook Live and stream it? So now people are streaming it, but at the core of it, it's a meeting, right? And now that they're streaming it, so there's some overlap there. And then the conference is like the newest technology, which uses some of the features from all of them, right? It's a hybrid. It's like it's a webinar and a meeting at the exact same time, right? And then it brings in a new feature where, like me and you are talking back and forth, and it's able to bring two people who are complete strangers and bring them together to have a quick networking session among the other. So, and there's not a lot of companies doing it at that level now. So because you're using your camera and your microphone and you can do it from home, that is where kind of everything, all of them overlap, where you can do this, all from home. I look at it like this. I look at it as, listen, live streaming is like your own television. You have your own television show, right? You can put on a show or not, but you have the ability to have your own show. I look at podcasting as you have the ability to have your own radio show, right? So you can get on there and have a radio show. I look at, meetings. The meeting software is being able to have meetings with the people you need to meet with, where, right now you can't or you shouldn't go meet with them, but you can just meet with them. And I look at webinars as being able to present to a audience as a way to have a presentation where they're going to watch. So for me, I've kind of made that distinction between the different platforms. But because they're all use your camera and your microphone and your computer, I can see how they can overlap. But you just have to figure out, what do you want to have at that very end result for the attendee or the people watching or listening to your meeting, your TV show, your radio show, however you're putting out the content that needs to get put out.
Got it. So You're ultimately saying one of Stephen Covey's principles, which is begin with the end in mind.
Yes, sir.
You start with what you want the audience. What is your objective in communicating with the audience? Start there, and then build everything back from that point. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And
now,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Greg.
No, I was just going to say, one of the things that we want is, we want to grow this group a little bit. And so for those who want to have some more conversations and content for entrepreneurs on how to grow their business, ultimately what we want is people to join our Facebook group, and they can do that at technologytuesday.com. So that's why we have it up on the screen, so you guys can go there and join that group. And we'll have more conversations like this with myself and other entrepreneurs, sharing some resources and tips on how to grow your business, especially now. There's a lot of things you can do online that you may not be aware of. And I think that it's great that you encourage us to have this conversation and bring our conversations that we're normally having on a live where we can share it with people, because I know I usually know of and share with you things that other entrepreneurs should know as well. So I'm happy to do it.
I thank you for that. That's not going to stop. We're going to keep that going too.
Yes,
we're not going to cut that up. But I do agree that a lot of things that we're discussing behind the scenes, more people can benefit from, which is why I wanted to rev up these Technology Tuesdays, have this be a consistent thing where we get on the mic, share with people. So those who want to benefit from it. It's not going to be for everybody. It's going to be for those who really want to benefit, just to get an insight into your tech knowledge, to know how to use the technology properly. Because I think that's the real key. It's not that the technology exists. It's how do you take the technology, use it properly, and fit it into your business to maximize your revenue and also free up your time. Like the key is to have the tools to eliminate the manual labor. And I think if you're not using the tools properly, then you're not eliminating the manual labor, which is one of the things I think we're going to carry over till next week. So on Technology Tuesday next week is once we have these tools, I've gone out because everybody's going out and got Zoom, and everybody's going out and got, GoTo-Webinar. They're getting these different platforms. What do I want to set up inside the platform? So for example, the Zoom became really popular and people were taking advantage of its popularity. And the reason why people were becoming vulnerable is because they didn't have the proper settings within Zoom in order to get it to work the way they needed to. So people are getting the stuff, but then they don't always know how to set it up. It reminds me of VCRs. I know I'm starting to date myself when I say VCR. Those younger folks that are watching, listening in, tuning in. This was, years ago, people used to go buy these machines to tape their TV shows, but they couldn't use the machine that they bought because they couldn't set the timer. Remember that you go to your grandmother's house? I would go to my grandmother's house, and the timer on her VCR was still blinking 12 o'clock, so she couldn't tape this. They call them the stories. The stories, remember this, like Young and the Restless and all that. She couldn't tape the stuff because the VCR wasn't set up. So people have been going out and getting, especially Zoom, right? Zoom, you talked about the numbers earlier. The Zoom numbers have jumped up. People have gotten this stuff, but now they don't know how to set it up. So I know we've been on here for about 40 minutes, and I don't want to overwhelm people's minds with too much tech stuff in one night. But so next week, just to give you a preview for those who are watching live with us or watching the replay back later, next week at Tech Tuesdays, and I think we'll probably be on around the same time. Let's say like 6 o'clock in the evening. Well, we'll make an announcement about the time later if we figure that out. And we'll be here next week talking about the settings that you want to have. How do you implement these tools? You got the tools, but how do you now implement the tools properly to maximize your time and maximize your revenue? And as we bring this to a close, Greg, unless there's something else you wanted to share.
No, this is good.
As we bring it to a close, I want to just drop this little nugget in people's minds. Like, the world is in a different state right now than I've ever experienced in the little bit of time that I've been on this planet. And I know eventually we're going to get back to the way things were before. However, there will be some shifts. This time period, this last 30 days has created some shifts in consciousness. So I know there's going to be a desire for people to, stop bumping elbows. I think that's what we're doing now, bumping elbows, right? We're not handshaking. There's going to be a desire to get back and handshake with people, hug people, to get away from the social distancing and be with people. So live events, one-on-one, physically, live events are coming back. Live keynotes are coming back where people are going to be on stages physically live. However, what I suspect, this is just what I'm thinking, now that we've created this new mechanism, a lot of people I've been watching, they said before that they would never do virtual stuff. Like some of my wife's clients that they were serving, all of their evaluations, when they would go to evaluate their new clients, all of them were done face-to-face. Now they're evaluating clients through the virtual meeting. So this has forced people to open up their minds to new ways of interacting that they might have been, they were resistant to before. So as we move into the future, then at the rest of the year, they're going to still be people who are saying, well, I like that virtual thing, and they're going to want options. So if you think that, well, I'm going to set this out, and eventually this wave is going to be over, and I'll be okay because I'm going to go back to the way it was before. Well, the way it was before is dead. We're not going back, because once the mind has been expanded to a certain level, it never reshapes back to the way it was before. Now people have been forced to deal with virtual events. And the responses I've been seeing is a lot of people are liking it. People who didn't think they were going to like it. So this is going to be a new alternative. Yes, people are still going to want to have the regular events we had before, but there's still going to be an element that said, hey, can we do both? Can we have both? Can we somehow tie this other option in? Like, I won't be able to come there physically. Can you give me a virtual component as well? So this is not going away. Would you agree with that, Greg?
I definitely would. I definitely would. They're even planning, and you can, do it now if we didn't have social distancing, but where you have your physical event and then you also tie in the virtual event. So for those who can't come, they can tie into the virtual event and do both, right? And this has not even been that, it's not that complicated, because if you think of pay-per-view, right?
Right.
Pay-per-view is basically where you're paying to watch an event, right? And the boxing has been doing it for years, and wrestling has been doing it for years, where you're paying, you can't go, but you can pay to watch it. So now that the technology is able to allow us to have more interaction and more of that, now you can have more live events and virtual events at the same time, a hybrid of both. And I know that because we were forced to be in quarantine, that is definitely, when we come out of being on lockdown, that's going to be the next thing, where people are going to do both, because they understand that so many people are going to want to be able to come and be there. And then you have the rest of the people who would attend and pay to attend, but they may not be able to be there. So the hybrid of both is definitely what's coming for all kinds of events.
Right. Definitely, man. Definitely. Our palate has been expanded. So you're talking about food, tasting food, try something new. Like, your palate's been expanded. So our palate has been expanded in terms of how we process information, how we interact with each other, and people are going to want more items on the menu. And if you don't have a way to provide those items, then you're going to be missing out as an entrepreneur as we move further and further into the 21st century. This being forced to experience it is shaping people's mind to say, well, hey, this is not as bad as I thought it was. I actually like it. And they're going to want to keep doing more of it. So I want to thank you for inviting me on your channel and allowing me to co-host with you. I appreciate that. And I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge with us that may not have as much tech savvy as you. And I look forward to Tech Tuesday next week.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you guys have any questions, go ahead and put it in the comments and we will follow up there. And make sure that you join the group. Head over to technologytuesday.com, where we can take care of everything, all your technological needs, so you can grow your business, get more clients, and enjoy this time that you're having with your family. I'll talk to you guys next week. Jerry, have a good one. You guys take care.